I believe that the solutions to a lot of our healthcare problems are going to be coming out of Africa. You know, being the cradle of humankind and having the largest diversity in genetic information, the potential of Africa to become a leader in healthcare is extremely high. So for me, that's the most exciting bit, is that the information that is contained in every gene on African soil can hopefully lead to a cure of a disease in the future.
And that's what most excites me, these unseen discoveries that we'll find now as we're ever increasing the capacity of genomics coming from Africa and really correcting that historic shortfall that we've had with underrepresentation of African genomes in Africa. So things like personalized medicine, finding underlying causes of various diseases, I think we can't imagine the advancements that will follow in the next few years.
Something that's quite remarkable about this unit in particular is the fact that it had very continuous and incremental growth, but not only in terms of sequencing capacity, where they started off with quite lower capacity, but across the whole pipeline that is required to do successful NGS. This includes everything from the staff, from the experience they built up, but also for the computing power required to do the downstream analysis and the redundancy in data storage. And I think the fact that this happened gradually is what's going to make it sustainable.
From starting off with small instruments up to the point where we've got one of the biggest sequencers in the world in the lab, the growth is exponential at this stage.
So Africa is severely underrepresented in terms of sequencing data compared to the rest of the world. If you look at the publications, there's only about 10% of African data that's represented in all of the publications. And I think the idea is to obviously take that to a much higher level. So we want to sequence as much genomes, both diagnostic samples and population-based genetics as possible.
I hope that genomics in Africa will expand and that the infrastructure and science knowledge that we can provide will grow exponentially over the decade.
I think over the next decade we'll see a massive expansion across the whole continent, specifically probably starting with a large rollout of pathogen genomics. I think that's always been a priority in Africa, but I think going beyond that, I would expect to see large-scale human genome projects. You know, we have so much diversity in this continent in terms of human genomes, and beyond that, plant and animal genomes that to date have largely often been sequenced by in other countries. That I think going forward, I think in Africa we will see not only that those species will be sequenced, but that they will be sequenced locally.
The most significant challenges to genomic research in Africa, in my opinion, are three factors. The one is funding, the other one is high-end infrastructure, and the third one is access to skilled individuals who can actually work on these types of instruments. Through our investment and our partnership with the NICD, we are able to at least tackle two of those challenges. One is increase the infrastructure and the capacity to do this kind of work on African soil. Second one is partnering with the NICD for workshops and training events so that we can develop more skilled individuals on the continent. And hopefully the two that we're working on will lead to an increase in funding and projects and hopefully some large-scale genomic initiatives that will then yield some significant results.
From a research perspective, I would say funding to actually run projects, where we see there's quite a bit of infrastructure, particularly in COVID times. There was a lot of enablement to get that infrastructure for NGS going, but it can be quite expensive to secure funding then to run projects of statistical significant size. And the second thing I would say is making sense of the data to actually know what this all means, particularly in clinical relevance.
I think absolutely vital, we can't understate it. Given the shortages that we have of certain resources like funding and like those scarce skills, being able to share them as broadly as possible wherever they exist is absolutely vital. Having these multinational networks across the continent that leverage on the same infrastructure and together develop the local skill set, it's really going to be the accelerator we need for African genomics.
Well, I think the biggest part of this is trying to upscale the knowledge in Africa, to get people in Africa to get the skills, to do the work themselves here and get the knowledge in Africa. A lot of the sequencing is sent abroad, and I think we need to get this locally to reduce cost in getting the sequences done. So I think that's the important part, is getting the skill into the country.
There are so many benefits for oncology, everything from risk stratification to identifying mutations that can help us to give targeted therapies, and beyond that, even from the research perspective, for us to be able to catalog and to understand what mutations are most common in specific populations under certain conditions. There's both a theoretical component to that, but also a very application-based component.
The most exciting advances has been the development of a low-cost, high-throughput methodology that helps us to study the human genome. This is to unlock the power of genome. This is Illumina's logo.
So at some point, PCR was quite a novel thing, and real-time PCR was a little bit intimidating. So now these days, PCR is used as a routine technique in research and in diagnostics as well. So if I look at the growth for NGS, I'm quite excited to see that someday, in the hopefully near future, this will be the same for NGS, where it is widely adopted by the community and accessible to everybody.
If I had to use one word, it would be momentum.
Growth.
Transformative.
Infection.
Illuminating.
Enormous.
Exciting.
In one word, promising.